What's cracking, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon GO Battle League content. Today's video, we're taking a look at some teams in the Great League for the upcoming rotation that we're going to have all three open leagues, and Great League is going to be here for 2 weeks. So that we're going to have the extended 2-week rotation of Great League just because it happens to fall together. But we're going to take a look at some teams here. But first, before we get into the 5 teams that I think are going to do very well this rotation, I do want to go take a moment to give you guys this little tip here in the beginning. If you're ever wondering, you know, where can I find some good team ideas or what individual Pokemon are doing well at the moment, if you go to the PvPoke website and go to the train drop down, you go to the top performers, you can select a league. We're going to use Great League in this example, and you're going to be able to see all of the top performing Pokemon in the Great League. Somehow, Lantern is still on top. You will notice, though, that as of recording this video, the latest update is on June 24th. PvPoke usually doesn't update every rotation when we get the Great League, so I expect there to be an update, so just keep an eye out for that, as there may be some updated teams and Pokemon usage ratings in that time. But if you scroll down, you can see some of the top teams based on the PvPoke usage data. So it's a really cool way to go see some teams if you're kind of struggling and not sure what to run. But in this first team we're going to look at here, this is going to be Alolan Sandslash Double Water. Alolan Sandslash cores very well with things like Azumarill and other water types that can handle the fire types that really, you know, give problem Sandslash, but also things that can handle the fighting types like Poliwrath and Annihilape. So Azumarill is a very solid counter to those things, and Lantern is in the back because it's a very solid answer to Poliwrath, which you may or may not see. And Lantern is like the top Pokemon in the Great League at the moment, so it kind of makes sense here. Even I don't appreciate safe swapping Lantern, but some people get away with it and it works out for them. Otherwise, you could run Azumarill with Ice Beam Play Rough, and you can have that as your safe switch, trying to draw out those grass types, those answers to your Lantern, and be able to maybe close with the Lantern with shields, or you could safe swap the Lantern if you really want to take a gamble on it. But Lantern is fairly inflexible, it's just that it's got a lot of bulk. But this team overall, a lot of play into the meta. Again, we're going to be looking at open Great League teams. So your letter coverage is going to be bad no matter what team you pick, pretty much. Unless you pick like top 3 PvPoke. If I were to put Annihilape, Registeel, and Carbink, I'd probably have decent coverage. But the team would be super alignment based and not have a very good flexible playstyle. So I like flexible playstyle Pokemon, and that's just my preference. And so this team is going to offer you that because it is a little bit alignment based, because Alolan Sandslash has 2 double weaknesses. But if you're able to maneuver the back line, the safe switch situation, in a way that maybe Alolan Sandslash can come out of there with some energy to fire off charge moves against some of its counters, that often ends up helping you win some games with this kind of a team. You also don't have to run Lantern. You could run Feraligatr, you could run Tapu Fini, you could run Mantine, you could run any number of things here. But Alolan Sandslash at the moment, I think, is cooking in this meta, and I think it's worth giving it a shot. Your hardest answers here are going to be things like Lickitung if you're running Shadow Claw. So if you see a lot of Lickitungs, maybe you want to run Powder Snow on your Alolan Sandslash. Registeel could be an issue, but if you're running a Shadow Alolan Sandslash and you have Shadow Claw, you should be able to win the 2-shield scenario, which then would open up your Azumarill to hopefully whatever's in the back to be able to beat it, because typically they have Registeel in the lead, they'll be weak to something in the back that's like, you know, Fairy, right? They'll be weak to Fairy in the back. But other than that, grass types with good coverage moves into Alolan Sandslash can core break this team. Meganium having Earthquake. Go-Goat, I think it has Rock Slide, but if you see a Go-Goat, let me know, because I haven't seen one, because they're so very hard to get at the moment. Lurantis has Superpower, right? Gallade having Leaf Blade Close Combat. You can kind of see the connection here. Things with grass and fighting coverage are going to be a bit of a pain into this team, but you could probably maneuver around it with some you know, finesse. But overall, like, though, this team is very solid. I know for many seasons now, myself and other trainers have had success running some variation of Azumarill Steel or Alolan Sandslash and Water. So those are 2 very solid pairings that'll probably be around for a long time to come. But let's go take a look at another team here. So this one, I know, all right, there was a Lantern on the first screen. There's a Bastiodon on the second screen. XehrFelrose, what are you doing? You hate those Pokemon, and you're right. I don't like using them, but that doesn't mean that they're not good. This team is extremely strong. I have a few people that I know that have turned this team into early legend runs in previous seasons. So this is a very strong team. The Annihilape Bastiodon, and you're using that Dugong safe swap to pull out maybe their fighter. or something else that maybe the Bastiodon wouldn't want to see, right? Like, you know, we might even catch like a Mudboy like with Quagsire if you get lucky. I mean, usually they won't draw out the Quagsire. Dugong can flip switch against those things, and that's why it's so strong, because it has that icy wind debuff and the ability to hit that ground typing with Drill Run. It's a very, very flexible save swap here, and that's what I love about it. Now, if you don't want to run Bastiodon, completely fair. You don't have to. You could run something like Lickitung or Alolan Sandslash in its place, and you might enjoy that a little bit more if you don't like the Bastiodon play. But it's something that works for a lot of people, and if you're okay with running Bastiodon, this team is certainly going to do some good stuff for you. And it's got an A rating for bulk, an A rating for consistency. It is going to be somewhat alignment-based, considering it's got Bastiodon, but I think Annihilape and Dugong are two of the more... I keep saying the word flexible, but they really are. Like, they are able to hit so many things for such good damage that they really are able to make up for the just absolute atrocity that is the RPS of Bastiodon. RPS means the rock, paper, scissors, basically just very alignment based. But, you know, when you look at our core breakers here, it's going to be things like Clodsire, Feraligatr could be trouble. You're not going to see too many Como-Os or Chestnuts, most likely. I dare say you won't see any Sneaslers or Quackaballs. Opposing Annihilapes are an issue, so I would say if you're going to run this team, I would go for the attack-weighted Annihilape to make sure that you win the charge attack priority ties if you're going to play this team. Other than that, because I did try this team with a rank 1 Annihilape, and I got shattered by every other person running an attack-weighted Annihilape. So I would at least do that much if you're going to run this team. Otherwise, yeah, it's super solid, and I really can recommend this one. So let's take a look at another team. This one's a fun team for me. It's one that I've enjoyed honestly ever since we got Giratina a couple seasons ago. And if you don't have Giratina, don't fret. You can absolutely run something else. Again, just like in Remix, we could run Cofagrigus. You could also run Shadow Dragonite or a regular Dragonite. You don't have to run Shadow if you don't want to. You could run like Sableye. There's things that you can run in place of the Giratina and get similar effect out of it. I just enjoy using Giratina just because I have one. I know a lot of people who do have one enjoy it, and I'm hoping that any of you who don't have one, there's some way that we're going to be able to get them soon. Remember, if you don't have the Great League Giratina, what you have to do is you have to find another trainer that has the 1500-ish CP Giratina from the February Sinnoh Tour research that we got, and just trade with them and hope it rolls under 1500. Kind of like how the Tapu Fini and Guzzlord trades work for Great League. So that's going to be how you obtain a Giratina origin for Great League. Goodra, though, I cannot overstate. I cannot state properly how good of a safe swap Goodra is. If the opponent doesn't straight smack you with a fairy, which honestly is the point of this team, so we have Empoleon with Steel Wing to beat the fairies in the lead. We have Goodra as the save swap to draw out the fairies for the Empoleon to make very short work of, hopefully freeing up the Giratina to sweep in the back. Goodra with Thunder Punch and Aqua Tail is such an incredibly strong safe swap in this meta. The Sims don't do this thing justice, okay? The fact that it has Thunder Punch coverage for things like Skarmory and allows it to flip that matchup, if you land a Thunder Punch on a Feraligatr, you're chilling. It's a lot cheaper than the Power Whip, and you also have coverage for things like Mandibuzz. And honestly, most of the things on this team, or on this coverage list here that are considered as things that beat the whole team, right? Like, Goodra can handle all of these, and none of them really enjoy eating energy from Empoleon. So even though they beat the whole team on paper, this team is super, super solid. I've used it plenty of times myself, sometimes with a Skarmory in the lead. If you don't have an Empoleon with Hydro Cannon, you can use that. But Goodra on the safe swap with this team is just, it's absolutely fantastic. Another team that I can really recommend if you want to have some fun. This is more of a fun team to me, but obviously you're going to have an issue with something that might be, you know, like a Lickitung is an issue for a lot of variations of this team. You basically have to just keep the Lickitung away from the Giratina, and you're going to do okay. Preferably, I would either go with Empoleon or I would go with Skarmory. Those are the two leads that I would go with, but I would keep the backline the same in this team. So let's take a look at another team here. So this one's interesting to me because I have played a Gligar Mudboy Core to Legend last season. I tried a team similar to it this season and didn't have as much success, but other trainers told me they did very well with it. So There's two ways to run this team. You can run it with Quagsire lead, double flyer in the back, or if you want to, you could run a flyer in the lead, Gligar safe swap, and then have the Quagsire in the back as your closer. We used to run this team with the Whiscash before the Scald debuff, or the Scald nerf. I'm so used to saying Scald debuff at this point. Before the Scald nerf, and if you're gonna run a flyer in the lead, I'd probably go with something like Mantine. Or you could do Mandibuzz as well. Both are very solid into most things, but Mantine just seems to be a little bit less prone to getting slapped around by fairies, whereas Mandibuzz would have a problem with that. Also means that you can play out more leads with the Mantine, because Steel and Electric are very uncommon overall in the lead in the Great League, unless you see Lantern, but at that point you could use your Quagsire and Gligar in the back to try and align that. But the team as it is, right, we're using Gligar on the safe swap, and you're just hoping that they don't counter swap a Dugong, because if they do, that would be sad. Overall, this team, again, it's going to be an alignment-based one, as some of these ABB teams are, but overall, this team does have a strong amount of play into the meta, and you do definitely want to be keeping your Quagsire on a Skarmory if they are there, and honestly, even though Quagsire technically loses to Skarmory and Mandibuzz can beat it, I know that Quagsire has a ton of play in the Skarmory matchup because it resists those Steel Wings and has such incredibly strong pacing with those Aqua Tails. And if you do decide to run Mud Bomb, which is definitely a thing you can do, it also has Stone Edge to be able to hit those flyers as well. Overall, the team gets broken a bit by Mantine, if it has Ice Beam especially. But if anybody who has ever played the Shadow Quagsire into Mantine matchup knows, if you land that Stone Edge, they are going to have a hard time winning because they then have to start shielding Aqua Tails. Azumarill would be uncomfortable, as would, I would imagine, Guzzlord. You could do okay with the Quagsire and the Gligar, and even Mandibuzz has a way to hit that. No one's playing Medicham anymore, and Lantern is really the polarizing pick here, because you have to basically align the Lantern up to the Quagsire for really effective ways to beat it, and have Mud Bomb. If you've got Aqua Tail and Stone Edge, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to beat the Lanterns, but you could do it. And then obviously you've got Dig on the Gligar, which you can hit for super effective damage on those Lanterns. Pretty much everything else on this list, up until we get down to Skarmory, is going to be non-existent. So those are the only things that might give you trouble, and even then, they're all probably doable. You really have to make use of the Quagsire in that case where you see something like Mantine, Azumarill, and even that, like, right, Mandibuzz and Gligar do fine with shields up into things like Mantine and Azumarill. So let's take a look at the last team, one of my favorites. So this is a spin on a team that I have played the Legend a few seasons ago when Skeledirge was first introduced to Pokemon Go. It cores very, very well with Serperior. And Dugong used to be the safe swap on the team. And if you want to, you could certainly run it that way again. But I do like the idea of having Poliwrath on the team here to be able to beat other things that would give the team some trouble, like other Feraligators. But that does make the team much weaker to things like Lantern. So your safe swap here can vary. I think you just want to go for whichever one gives you the best opportunity to maybe flip switch advantage, right? Like even if you wanted to use something very generic like Sable, I wouldn't use Sableye because of ABA Ghost, but you could run something like another safe grass type, or you could run something like Lickitung, or you could even throw, you know, Goodra, or you could just play the Dugong the way the team was originally created. But overall, I mean, this team is more of an anti-meta team than really anything else, right? Like, you know, your Skeledirge is going to be able to do a lot of damage with its charge moves and those incinerates, but there are definitely some things that this team is weak to as it is, and one of those things is going to be Mantine. Mantine is a huge issue for this team, so this is why I'm saying, like, if you don't want to use the Poliwrath, and maybe you want to choose a different grass type, like, you could even use Ferrothorn if you wanted to, that would be fine, but you would have a lot more of an issue against things like Registeels with that Serperior. The nice thing about the team as is that it beats those Registeels, which have been sort of making a comeback, but Talonflame is also a bit of a problem for this team as is, so I think that if you play around with the compositions, it's just that Serperior is a good core mate, but also many other grass types also work well with Serperior. And then Poliwrath is there as just a safe swap. You can really pick whichever one you feel more comfortable with. But that's basically going to be this last team here. It's a very fun team, as I've used it plenty of times. Skeledirge is one of my favorite Pokemon to run in PvP. So hopefully this video is helpful if you're trying to decide on teams. Again, if any of these teams maybe do work for you, let me know in the comments if you have success with one of these teams. I always love to hear when any of the teams that I come up with for these metas, you know, end up doing well for people. It makes me feel real warm and fuzzy inside. So, but other than that, let me know in the comments what you're going to be running in the Great League this week or next week. And that's going to do it for me for today's video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We're going to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.